Good afternoon. We have a call-in user, first four digits 7155, last two 11. Can you identify yourself, please?
This is Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you.
By the redistricting.
Well, being 4 o'clock or a little thereafter, we will call the Marathon County Executive Committee to order. I will also call the Marathon County Redistricting Committee to order. And we will start with item number 2, public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to address the Executive Committee or the Redistricting Committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, approval of the October 20th, 2021 Executive Committee meeting minutes. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Robinson. Is there a second? Second by
Supervisor Mask.
Okay, I had Supervisor Leahy first, Supervisor Mask. Thank you, though. Supervisor Leahy with the second. Any discussion on the motion to approve the October 2021 Executive Committee meeting minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion to approve the October 2021 meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carried, and it is unanimous. Thank you. We'll go on to policy issue and discussion for possible action. Discussion and recommendation for the filling Supervisory District 12 seat. And let me just give you a little bit of information on that Supervisory District seat. We will be talking briefly, or in a very short period of time, about the redistricting, and that district does go through a significant change in redistricting. Right now, it covers the town of Easton and parts of Wausau, and it is now going to change. It is not going to be any part of Wausau. And so the question becomes, we usually do a 3-week solicitation of letters of interest. I have had at least 3 individuals that have spoken to me that have mentioned or to Kim and expressed interest in that district. The challenge is that part of those, one of those individuals that is seeking interest or has interest, a letter of interest, will be districted out of that district when and if the redistricting plan gets adopted as proposed. And then there's potentially individuals that are interested that may not effectively be in the district today. So the question, and we do a 3-week recruitment that gets published, and then we schedule interviews and make recommendations to the board and for discussion. It's be challenging to get it that time period done and the interviews scheduled and conducted to get a potential approval or a recommendation to the board in December. So it probably would be January, which is after, obviously, the nomination papers are going to be required to be turned in. And so my thought is that I know that it's not the preferred situation, but because of, I think, a couple of challenges that we have, the redistricting being one, and 2, nominations being taken out, that if there is only one, my proposal would be that if there's only one person that turns in nomination papers, and the and is that person happens to serve in the boundaries what is the current Supervisory District 12, and would still also be in the new Supervisory District 12, that we appoint that person at that time. If there's more than one that have application and nomination papers filled out, allow the taxpayers to select that individual for that seat. I know that's not ideal. However, the biggest majority of the board's decision-making and or policy setting, which is the biggest policy set that we set, is the budget. That will be done in November. So I throw it out for discussion, and with that understanding that there's those challenges that we're sitting and facing. Thoughts by the committee? Everybody's deep in thought. Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is something that if there are going to be, if there's just going to be one person after the papers are turned in January, and there's no competition, I think at that time it may be appropriate to possibly bring it back to executive and decide to fill that spot. But if there's going to be competition with 2 people running in that district, I think we leave it up to the public and let them elect, one of the 2 or 3, depending on how many people file. But I don't, I don't think that we're going to know that till the end of, or till the beginning of January when the papers are turned in.
Yeah, we wouldn't. Supervisor Mask, go ahead.
I agree with that strategy. I think that would be the right way to go. Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion?
This is Supervisor Pfeiffer.
Supervisor Pfeiffer, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with what you laid out. I think that makes sense that based on this timeline and the uncertainty, and specifically with how that district is going to be changed, I think the path that you laid out makes the most sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Does anybody want to make a motion or a recommendation that we follow that it is left open until nomination papers are filed, and when nomination papers are filed, that we bring it back to this committee for discussion?
Supervisor Mask.
Mr. Chair,
I got Supervisor Robinson first. Go ahead, Supervisor Robinson.
I was just going to simplify it and move that we defer any action on this until the January Executive Committee meeting, which would let us evaluate it at that time.
All right, the motion, is there a second? The motion to defer or postpone action until January, so it'll show back up on the January Exec Committee agenda. Supervisor Butke with a second.
Lyon, second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to postpone action on item number 4A, discussion or recommendations on filling Supervisory District 12 seat until January Exec Committee meeting. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to operational function required by statute, ordinance or resolution. A consideration of the proposed final supervisory redistricting map for forwarding to the county board. And we have with us representation from North Central Regional Planning. And he will give us the update on where we sit as far as adoptions by municipalities and potential recommendation on some corrections.
So if you remember, you guys passed your tentative plan that goes out to the municipalities, the board plan, and their districts. And the city of Wausau is making a request for a change, and so is the village of Weston. We can look at those two. It's
Can't hear him.
No, sorry, I apologize. So I'll start over. So again, you guys passed your tentative redistricting plan. It goes out to the municipalities for the municipalities to look at it, make any suggestions on changes that they want. The city of Wausau is requesting a change, and so is the village of Weston. Neither one of those changes affect your overall plan deviation. It's still at that 14.18% deviations because your two districts that are your highest and lowest aren't affected by these two changes. And I can show the map up on the screen, or somebody can. Is it up there now? Everyone sees it?
There we go.
So the two changes that they're requesting, the one is in the city of Wausau, District 9, they're asking, your green line is what you guys proposed to them. They're asking it to come up in this area right here, this red area is what they're requesting to change. So if you move from District 11 into 9, that's one of the areas. And the other area was down here in the corner of the village of Weston. You guys proposed the line here, and they wanted to run it all the way over to the village boundary like it was before, and extend 18 over that way. Anybody need more information about those? Want to look at them closer? Any questions about them? I did not get information exactly why they wanted them changed. Those were brought to the planning department, and they asked me to come present them.
Questions by the committee?
It is your decision to accommodate them or make those changes. Typically, most counties will accommodate changes from the municipalities if it doesn't affect their overall deviation of their plan or cause some other issues. But it's your decision on what you want to do with them.
Do we know what, a question would be, do we know what the actual deviation changes for 18 and the other, because obviously 18 is going to be gaining
Yep.
population, and which district is going to lose it?
Yeah, so in this one, it would have been 22 losing it, so in the change, 18 went to 5.4, and 22 went to negative 3.2, and before, 18 was at 2.4,
Okay.
and 22 is so, you know, they're less equal, for sure, but your overall deviation doesn't affect because you're still your two, I wrote it down, your two highest and lowest districts, you know, your 32 is at -8.5 and 24 is at 5.59. Neither one of these push up into that and don't affect the overall deviation of your plan. It does affect the deviation of those districts, obviously, when you're shifting blocks.
Any other questions? Go ahead. Supervisor Rosenberg.
I'm in the village of Weston, District 21. When I looked at my district, there's the row of houses that I'm in, which is backed up to the high school. It goes all the way down that row of houses. It's unconnected from any of the other areas, except for a little bit on the bottom, and it looks like I got gerrymandered into my own district. Now, that should be a positive for me, but the populations it doesn't help the population split between the districts that are there, and it doesn't seem to be the right thing to do, and I'm wondering what the criteria is to put me in my own district, but in such an odd way.
Yeah, so, I mean, typically, the rules of redistricting are to keep equal representation is the driving interest, you know, one person, one vote. The second one is to keep them compact and also to preserve the districts as they were before. And you can look at where the incumbents are. It's not illegal to look where your incumbents are, and typically if you redrew all the districts and made them just compact, and we've done this before in other counties, people don't like it. They don't like the change. They get used to those districts. Those districts sit around for over, you know, for 10 years for each decade, and people do not like change. But obviously population shifts. They don't shift equally across the county, so the districts will need to shift. But, you know, keeping the existing districts intact where you can doesn't confuse voters, and people are happy with it. You try to keep municipalities intact where you can, or communities of interest, so-called, when you draw these things. And you try to balance all those and still create equal representation. As we talked about our districts, by keeping some of the municipalities intact, your deviation's out a little past that 10% rule that the courts have generally said are equal, and some of the supervisors have, you know, issue with that. But it's hard, and even though you can say you don't have a rural county, you have a pretty rural county, you know, besides the urban area. And with the number of supervisory districts you have, you know, they're very sensitive to just changing a few people and your deviations move. I don't, you know, remember exactly what happened in District 21. I mean, I think we started with the old districts and started shifting them based on trying to keep them somewhat equal in representation. We went through numerous iterations to get to where we're at right now.
Well, this doesn't keep them in equal representation. I mean, there isn't a huge split, but mine is larger and the adjoining ones are smaller. But it also doesn't keep them compact. There's no reason to do this other than where I live. I mean, I can't, if somebody comes to me and says they're gerrymandered you into their district, I'd have to agree with them.
But that's not that was not the criteria that was provided to North Central Regional Planning, nor was it a criteria that they look at where the supervisors lived initially at all. That was not brought into the equation.
Look at the map and then.
I understand what the map shows. I truly do. I've looked at the map. I totally get what you're saying, but that is not the reality. And the reality is that North Central Regional Planning and the Planning Department of Marathon County did not look initially at any of where the supervisor lived when they drew the maps.
But we did start with the old district, so that's
We
kind
did
of
start
how
with the old
they
districts.
probably came from. And if you want to see some incumbent gerrymandering, I can show you some way better examples than what ever happened here. I don't even remember them discussing District 21 on any level, saying let's move it over to keep an incumbent in place. They were working off the old districts as we drew the districts.
I lost a huge part of where I am.
Out of
I mean, it's not
population.
like it didn't change a lot, it changed a lot.
Right, a lot of population over in that area, for sure, change.
That was a huge area. That and Cronenwitter is where the population shifted to from the rurals, and that's why the rural supervisory districts are especially on the west side of the county, pretty much all decreased in population. And so that's why you're seeing districts with negative deviations versus the metro areas.
I still, when I look at the map, I can't justify what's going on in my district. By any criteria, by compact, by population, any of it.
Yeah.
That,
Can't agree or disagree with you. I don't know. I've never really analyzed your district.
Well, I'm just pointing it out.
sure, totally understand. Thank you. Other discussion? Other discussion? Supervisor Robinson?
Did you take a look at all at the standard deviation that over 14% was a concern? We talked about it at the last meeting. When Emmett was drawing their ward lines, was there any discussion about trying to look at those in the context of equalizing representation out there?
They went with the districts that you provided to draw their wards within their municipalities and try to accommodate your supervisory district plan. If you remember, we did have a plan or two with lower deviations, but they didn't seem to make it out of committee.
Other questions? Other questions? Supervisor Leahy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the city districts 9 and 11, will we have anyone on hand at tonight's full board meeting to go over that from the city? Just so we can kind of get some clarification on those changes? Or is there anyone on right now?
Gary might be on the WebEx, and maybe he got some information on why the city is on here. Gary, are you on this call?
No, I don't think our GIS guy is on.
Yes, guy. You know, and sometimes they don't tell you why they do it. I'm guessing they did it to draw, you gotta remember, they also gotta draw equal aldermanic districts, and they're probably trying to limit the number of wards they have. And possibly, they have a aldermanic person sitting in that area. I don't know. I wasn't, both of those came into the planning department, and they mapped them for you guys to review and make a decision if you wanna accommodate those two changes. You don't have to.
In the discussions that I had heard, that was the reason. It was an aldermanic district line request to be consistent. Any other discussion? Well, so what is your pleasure? You know, the options that you have, you know, you can approve and recommend this be forwarded to the full board for the public hearing next Tuesday, or you can reject it. If you reject it, I don't know that we would have the time to get a new map approved through the municipalities in time to provide that information to the election commission and in the system to be able to have supervisory district paperwork taken out on December 1st. And again, remember, this committee's already approved that tentative map and forwarded it to the municipalities for their feedback. We've got resolutions from all the municipalities now approving the maps that we provided them, and short of the reconciliation of the city of Wausau and the reconciliation with the village of Weston on those two requested changes.
Chair, this is Supervisor Guild.
Supervisor Gill, go ahead.
I will make the motion to recommend approval of the current redistricting map, including the adjustments from the City of Wausau and the Village of Weston, and forward that to the County Board for final review and approval.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Pfeiffer?
Supervisor Pfeiffer with a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Please understand that this is, we are in a unique position, and that unique position is that we are in a compressed, super compressed time frame, and through no fault of anyone here, we received the data from the Census Bureau late. And therefore, we clearly were in a time crunch to be able to do this. And I do support moving forward with the proposed maps. And I understand they are not perfect, but I can honestly sit here and tell everyone that our staff and North Central Regional Planning did not draw these maps with any knowledge of where those current supervisors in any current supervisory district live. Now, they started from the existing supervisory districts, there's no question, and then imposed the change in census numbers that was provided by the census tract. And understand that there is not the ability to split a census tract. And that's one thing that some people will look at a map and sit there and say, why is this the odd shape? Well, that odd shape is because the census tract in some cases is drawn that way. The census tract is set up by the U.S. Census Bureau. And so a census tract is not allowed to be split. And in some cases, that's what it would take in order to make a potentially compact district. So you can move a whole census tract in or out of a supervisory district, but you cannot split a census tract. And that was one of the discussions that was had by one of the municipalities. And don't get me wrong, the logic that they had for wanting to split that census tract was perfectly legitimate. There will be an opportunity when the Census Bureau opens up the discussion about census tracts. In about 3 years, they can petition to have that census tract changed and the line drawn on that census tract changed. But at this point, we do not have the ability, when you're doing district maps, redistricting, to split census tracts. So just to be clear. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, the motion is to approve and move to the full board for its consideration the current redistricting map with the proposed changes for the City of Wausau and the Village of Weston to incorporate those upon reconciliation. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. All right, the motion is passed, but it is not unanimous. We will move on to the next meeting, time and date. Committee members are asked to bring ideas from future discussion to me. Next executive committee meeting is Thursday, December 9th at 4 p.m. And we are down to item number 8. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Butke and seconded by Vice Chair McEwen to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I will look forward to seeing everyone